Today on CityCast Denver, the legislative session is finally over. So we're digging into new laws and all the drama it took to get them passed or not. Me and producer Paul Karolyi are joined by one of our faves to talk all things state ledge, the no to yes in God's backyard, and more news of the week. Today is Friday, May 9th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Welcome to CityCast Denver, the show about the city that has full-on Aaron Gordon fever. I wrote this last night before the Nuggets absolutely effing tanked a game in the most embarrassing way. Did you guys watch that game?
I tried not to, actually.
Yeah.
Did you shield your eyes?
Yeah, I was at the after parties for all the legislative sessions, and it was on the TV. I was like, oh, God. Ooh. So I was shielding. But the Knicks did pull it off, though.
The
no?
Knicks.
The Knicks who?
What are Knicks?
It's
what
mostly
Knicks? Who are these Knicks? What are we talking?
It's mostly like boo Boston.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was texting some friends, trade MPJ before the first quarter was over. I'm on firmly on team trade MPJ. I know nothing about basketball. I think we should trade this guy.
Yep.
You didn't see MPJ on Denver Foos last night then.
I don't know anything about him.
Shout out Denver Foos.
That sounds great for them. I think we should trade him. That's my take on this.
Well, I just wanted to give a shout out to Aaron Gordon because I feel like this has been his playoffs. These like two buzzer beaters. And then did you see his adorable press conference with his nephews? I wanted to cry. It was so cute.
He really is.
He's Mr. Nugget.
He is Mr. Nugget.
We love him. Okay.
But if anyone sees him out in the city, I was talking to my wife about this, like local celebrities. I want to make a local celebrity culture happen here. And I think Aaron Gordon is the guy.
Oh, he's definitely a man of the people. If
anyone sees him, like, I'm not going to put a bounty out for photos, but I want to hear stories. I want to hear sightings. Like, leave the voicemail on the hotline. 720-500-5418.
I have an AG story. So rumor is that Aaron Gordon has like a house in like Rhino area, Five Points area. It's like a warehouse. It's massive. You can kind of get on these like invite only lists and you can get onto the parties. So when you go into the party, you have to check in your phone. You put it in a little bag and you check in your phone. So there's no phones allowed. The drinks are free. It's a whole thing. But this is the scandal. I don't know. You need to bring him on the podcast. You need to ask about this. I've heard this from now two separate people, 2 different times. Drinks are free. You can get on the list if you know somebody. But he charges for chicken tenders.
Aaron.
So like it's an open bar, but you have to
that offends me as a person.
I guess he has like an industrialized kitchen, and I just thought it was fascinating. So I was like, how much are the chicken tenders, right? Are like really good? There's like $3. I'm like, that's crazy. And I don't know if it's a true story or not.
I know. It's like,
but
I feel like
someone needs to
entice
investigate
people
this.
to like get wasted. I guess you don't really need to be enticed to get wasted. That's free beers or free booze is free booze.
So, yeah, Aaron Gordon, come on CityCast. Let us know why you charge for the chicken tenders.
Yeah, bring us some of the tenders. We want to taste them.
It's true. Maybe they're the best.
Maybe they're great.
Yeah, that's true.
Do people tip also?
From
Mr. Nugget to Mr. Nugget's tenders?
I think it depends on who he has serving them. If he like clearly has someone in to serve the nuggets, I would tip them.
Yeah. So if they're flipping the iPad around at Aaron Gordon's,
you know me,
warehouse.
Paul. You and I are opposite on this. I will tip anyone for anything. I used to tip my car hop at Sonic. I love tipping.
What do you mean opposite?
Tipper.
What are you implying?
I feel like you're always getting mad about people asking you for tips by turning the thing around.
No. I do think that there is a tip creep happening in society, and I am being asked for tips more often. I will always tip 20% as a matter of principle. I do not want to participate in the tipping conversation. I just don't want to think about it. So I have a firm rule that I do every time. And did I say 20%?
You said 20%.
Okay, I meant 75%. I tipped 75%, and I want that to be known. I'll also
I'm
be
going to go down
a
and
list of
ask
the
Queen
charities
City
I
Coffee
support
right now where we just were.
I feel like it depends on what service you're getting that you're tipping for. I've been to like froyo places where I'm doing the ice cream pouring.
Yeah, I know what you're
I'm
saying.
doing the toppings.
The one in Cherry Creek has the tipping.
In fact, your counter was dirty, so I took a napkin and cleaned that stuff. I go over to your counter. I put my froyo on your scale.
I was going to say on
you
the
hit
scale.
2 buttons, flip that iPad over, and it's 25, 30, 35%. What is this? That's insane.
I'm with you on
It
that,
is
Deep, because
insane.
I've had that exact experience at the Cherry Creek Froyo place. And I'm like, wait, first of all, it said it was a kid's cup. Why is this $27? And then they want you to tip on it.
Yeah, it's rough.
Bogus. Okay.
It's
Okay.
one of the great problems of our time.
Well,
And
I
actually, the
think you're working on it,
legislature
Paul.
was trying to tackle that. No more.
We
tips
are
up
going to
We'll talk
Froyo.
about it. We'll
Let's
talk about it.
get
We'll talk about
into
it.
it. Let's get into it. I'm
Because they
Bree.
biffed it.
Well, we're going to have you explain that, Paul, because we've been covering the tipped minimum wage conversation for the last couple of months. But I'm Bree Davies, coming to you live from the Dude IDK studios in beautiful 5 Points. You've already heard his voice. Paul Karolyi is here, our producer.
Shout out to Nick and Jacob at the studio.
We
What a
love
great
you
spot.
guys.
And a beautiful day today
Oh, gorgeous day.
after some rain.
We have a great guest. You've also heard his voice. He's one of our favorite political freaks, a guy who knows way too much about state politics and state politicians. Deep Singh Badhesha, hi.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here. This is a beautiful studio.
One
Isn't it
thing.
nice? Look, find us on YouTube. Watch the video. I
can
was
watch
looking at
us
it
right
last
now.
week when we were making it, when we were editing the show. I was like, damn, the video is better. The video is better. It is a better version of the show. Check it out. Seriously.
You can see us.
I liked it. I was enjoying it.
A little bit of business before we get into the legislative session. Our membership drive is over. So don't worry, we're not going to be bugging you anymore. But you might still want to become a member, because if you do, we've got a special email going out next week about a special event, and you'll get a special invite to it, and it's for members only. So if you want to be in the know, go to membership.citycast.fm. Okay, enough
I
of
can't
that.
wait for this event. We were brainstorming ideas for this poop and scoop thing, the dog poop and ice cream. Like, it's going to be really fun. It's going to be, I can't wait for this.
You're
It's-
really selling
A
it,
lot of
Paul.
people are saying it's going to be the kickoff to the summer.
Oh,
The
really?
exclusive invite-only party of the summer. You know, maybe Mr. Nugget will be there. He won't.
That's-
Maybe he will, but he won't.
Oh,
but
that
maybe.
would be
Hopefully,
such a dream.
hopefully on the next round of playoffs, and he's practicing. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, let's get to our top story. Legislative session is over. This means a lot of new laws and a lot of big flops. Before we dig into some specifics, Deep, you are hanging out at the Capitol all the time. Do you have any good goss or stories to share with us?
You know, I've been asking folks. I was asking around for those last 3 days, at the after parties after the session was over. What were the vibes? How did those vibes feel from the last 5 years? Overall, a lot of folks were like, "It's better."
Really?
Like, it feels more collegial. Things are moving along. And at the same time, I'm talking to my progressives, and they're like, "That's probably because we have no more expectations." And there was an idea that in 2018, Democrats got this massive trifecta during Trump won. And in 2020,
Controlling all the chambers,
All chambers.
all the government
the
and
government, so the governor's mansion, the state senate, and the state house, and we had the attorney general and the treasurer and the secretary of state. Very blue state, which it used to be a little bit more purple before 2018. So there was a lot of expectations in 2018. Like, we got this trifecta. Let's go take it for a run. 2020, oh my God, we grew it. 2022, maybe it's back last year. It wasn't. Blue wave, super majorities. 2024, more seats. So we are safe blue. And I think there was this idea that we're going to do some huge, big things. And people have been trying. They tried this year. And it figures we are not a state that's going to do big, bold things. We are a state that tweaks little bills here and there. That's what it's become.
state.
So I
A
think
state that tweaks.
we're a tweaker
This is
state.
where you need to watch this, because you're making these little
I'm making
gestures with your
These
hands.
are tweaks. I don't know what a tweak looks like. This is more of a dance move.
But you're saying not this big grandiose.
Yeah. So folks, it was interesting. Folks were like, we didn't know how to operate in this like new paradigm that it's Colorado's a very blue state. The lobbyists, whether it's the corporate side or the progressive side, kind of understand how it works. The governor's team,
Which is
Senate-
you? Which is you? Full disclosure, you are a
Yes.
lobbyist. That's why you're there. You're
Yes.
the lobbyist for DPS.
Yeah, I was just like, Deep just hangs
Full
out at the
disclosure,
Capitol.
not just there for
Yes,
the vibes.
I'm here on my own personal capacity, though.
Okay,
Just to clarify.
go on.
Yes, so I am a lobbyist, and that's why I hang out at the Capitol. I'm just not some sort of freak who does that. Do not recommend.
But I'm just reading the news. I'm
Yeah.
not there. I'm reading the news. My sense of the thing that was holding back this like dream of a grand progressive agenda was the governor. The governor and the Democrats had a lot of disagreements this session. I was just looking down the list of like either veto threats that are still outstanding or or vetoes that he offered, like on an open records bill. He disagreed with his caucus. Social media regulations, he vetoed a bill, and that
labor
veto
bill.
looks like it's standing. The labor bill he's going to veto. We'll probably talk about that. That was a big fight. The Uber bill, I think he might veto. The rent algorithm bill. That's like a long list of things that he disagrees with his caucus over. Do people hate this guy right now?
So back in the day when we had split chambers or very small majorities for progressives, if you were in the conservative status quo, if you're a conservative lobbyist, if you're advocating for those things, you are mostly trying to stop bills, right? You're mostly like the status quo is fine. Maybe every now and then there's like an industry handout bill that you're doing, but you're looking for the breaks, right? And back in the day when it was a split chamber, it's really easy to find the breaks. Now the equation becomes, okay, if this is a bill that the governor dislikes, it's going to become vetoed. So I can have this, I'll just water it down and slow it down throughout the session as a conservative lobbyist, and it'll hit the governor's desk and he'll veto it. But Governor Polis is progressive on some stuff. And when he wants something, he necessarily doesn't get his way. For example, yes, in God's backyard. Jared Polis does have a pretty progressive vision about building more housing, right? He has a progressive vision even when it comes to energy standards, right? He wants the state to have a bigger role than local jurisdictions do, right? And that is technically a bigger government take. It's a more progressive take, right? But when governor wants something like that, people find a different way to stop it, whether it's in a Senate committee or a House committee or on the calendar.
Well,
You
and
can
he's
see that in
seen
a
this
couple
a
ways.
lot too with his push for density, which we should clarify. Yes, in God's backyard was part of this bill that would allow churches and schools to utilize their land to build housing, and it didn't pass.
Yeah. And we've seen this time and time again where, Jared Polis is being like, hey, we're in a housing crisis. We need to do something big. Let's upzone places. Let's build better transit. Let's invest into these things. And the state legislature stops him, right? So I do agree that, Governor Polis is going to veto some of these things, right? But that's kind of baked into the equation. Because if he wasn't going to veto it, those bills might have never hit his desk in the first place.
If he wasn't going to veto it, the bills wouldn't have hit his desk in the first. What do you mean? Give me an example of that.
I'll give you a good example of this is the workers' protection, the bill that's going to repeal the Labor Peace Act. So for those of you who aren't plugged in, right now in Colorado, you have to take 2 votes to form a union, essentially. The first vote, and then, sorry, Bree.
Well, I was just going to say, but federal law
Yes.
is different. So in Colorado, we have these 2 votes to form the union. Most other places, you just need 1 vote.
Correct. So, there's been a big push for labor for a long time that, hey, we want to do away with the second vote, right? That if you had the vote the first time, that's enough to make a union. They were trying to strike a deal with the business community for a long time, right? And there's enough Democrats in both chambers to get this through. But all the Democrats who are voting yes on this are telling business people like, oh, I'm voting yes on this because they know Polis is going to veto it. But if you had
so they're doing it because they want to make a stand and so they can politically say, I
voted
support
for this.
labor,
Yeah.
even though they know it won't happen because Polis
Yeah.
demanded a compromise, which didn't happen.
So and you saw the business, right? The business community was like, oh, we're fine. Yeah, get this through House committee, get this through the Senate committee, take the votes as much as you want. We already have it stopped.
Yeah.
They would have changed their strategy if it was different, right? If the strategy was like, oh, Polis is going to sign it or a different governor is going to sign it, they
But because
would
they
have.
knew
Yes.
he was not going to
This
because
is-
he's really, he's pro-business. Like, we know this.
So you got to think about like where's the brakes on it, right? Because again, if Polis was all powerful, if he had all this stuff, why is his big priorities that I think would actually be really good for Denver and Colorado not getting through? So you got to think that, and that's the thing that I think progressives and Democrats thought there was going to be a paradigm shift, right? After 2018 to 2024, huge majority, safe blue state. I think everyone like, oh, we're going to swing for the fences. We're going to pass really innovative big things. We're going to make Colorado like on the map. And we realize, oh, we can't do that. We're just going to be tweaking things here left and right. I mean, the Colorado Sun put out a list of 101 bills that passed. Sounds like a lot of bills. And you're like, these are the 101 most consequential bills that passed. And you read that list and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it feels like it's not rising to the moment. Right?
Yeah.
In America, people have less quality of life than their parents did. First time in generations that's ever happened, right? At the federal level, Donald Trump and Republicans are passing so many things through executive order, like earth-shattering consequences, right? If you were to look at the bills that passed this session, you would think we were like summer of 2016. You would think that there's no national crisis happening, and it's interesting.
It's interesting to me too, but I don't know if I feel like it's not rising to the moment. What I see is genuine disagreement among the Democrats about how to respond to the moment. And it's something we've been talking about for months, and I see it in a few of these bills. I mean, maybe the trans rights bill is a good one to talk about next, but I think that's yes, it's Trump that's dictating the atmosphere, and he's creating this like looming threat. But in the case of the trans rights bill, that's what created this fight, was about how to respond to that. It wasn't about like, oh, should we like be the vanguard? It was like, should we be the vanguard and put ourselves at risk, or should we be a little bit more conservative and pull back? And that's a legitimate debate with people on both sides that are reasonable.
Do you think that's from a lack of leadership on the Democratic side? Like, what is causing that? Why are we not seeing that?
There is definitely a power vacuum right now, where there's no like leadership, and for the most part, Jared Polis is going to be done with his. He has one more session left. Also, some special sessions are probably coming up, so exciting! Everyone loves special sessions.
Everybody loves to work extra.
We might have an AI special session. Ooh, that's.
I want to talk about.
We'll talk about that.
We'll get to
talk about that later.
Democrats right now are trying to figure out what they want to be. Right? Do they want to be moderates? Do they want to be like this left-wing AOC Bernie populism? Do they want to, take on like a different tact? I think they are trying to figure that out. And in Colorado, that's going to really kind of bubble up during the 2026 primaries in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, I was joking with a friend that every single legislator is going to be passing Vote for Me for Higher Office Act of 2026. There's so many people in that building who are going from the House to the Senate, or going from the House and the Senate, running for Congress, or they're running for governor or treasurer.
So they're trying to set themselves up.
So it's really
some good
interesting.
PR.
You see these dynamics already forming. Next year, it's going to be interesting. Governor Polis is going to be essentially done. Maybe he'll swing for the fences again, trying to be like, hey, let's try to build some more housing. And maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. It's going to be really interesting. But the Colorado Democratic Party is in the same place as the National Democratic Party right now, is we don't necessarily know where we're going. And I heard this really good quote, so I need to pull out this quote so I don't butcher this quote. While I do this, here's an ad read from our sponsors. I'm kidding. I don't know if we have any of those.
Thanks for the throw to the ad break.
Babble. Learn a new language.
Here's
with
our
Babble.
CEO, David Potts.
So, this is a quote I think that sums up where the Democrats are and why I feel like a lot of people are like, we thought we were going to do more with this. And this is like, it summarizes the moment. Ready? One party is so committed to its ideological objectives, it's willing to violate the Constitution to achieve them. The other is so ambivalent about its own goals, it fetishizes procedural obstacles to their enactment. And I feel like, oh my God, that's the modern day Democratic Party.
Ambivalent about its own goals.
Yeah, would you explain the second half of that quote? Because I don't know if I understand.
The
what it's saying
Democrats
about
don't
the
know what to
left.
do with all this power, right? They have this power. They're in a safe blue seat. They have a fringe minority party that's never going to win power back in Colorado for at least probably 4 or 5 years, right? And they don't know what to do with it. They're just tweaking
That
things.
feels like lack of leadership to me.
Yeah.
There isn't a big, strong figure with ideas for what we should be doing.
I mean, this might be an interesting bridge for the AI conversation, right?
Well, before we go there, you brought up the protections for transgender individuals, aka the Kelly Loving Act, which would make it easier for trans folks to change their name on legal documents and forms of ID, and would consider not referring to a transgender person by their chosen name or disrespect to their gender identity as discrimination. What I found so this passed, but not without being pretty severely gutted, I think folks would say. But what I found really interesting was this wasn't just a party line fight. There was a fight on the left happening about what this bill was going to do. Deep, what were you at the Capitol for any of this? I mean, this was one of those hours-long testimony through the night kind of situations to just sort of push some basic legal protections for trans folks.
Yeah, so the act did pass at the end of the day. The coalitions got really interesting there, right? So like Tim Gill, who's like a big funder, he was one of the original Gang of Four in Colorado. He was like one of the big funders that
helped turn the state blue.
He helped turn the state blue essentially. Right?
And invented connections, which was like the precursor to a lot of social media and like hookup sites.
Oh
So,
wow.
in case you're wondering.
And I think, a big funder for a lot of LGBTQ causes for sure, right? I know there was like some issues from his camp in one Colorado, other progressive organizations about how to treat these issues. That one was interesting. Is I think there was a political valence to it about what are we doing in terms of politics, where does this backfire? But I actually think that was one of those questions that became a genuine policy disagreement, right? Not as much the politics. In the conversation as I was hearing, I wasn't hearing like, we're going to lose our next election over this, right? People are like, I'm in a swing seat and I think my voters are going to lash out on me. I actually didn't see that much like election fear from that. And as I was saying this, like Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, right? He's very pro-trans rights and he wins in Kentucky. So I think, Democrats for the most part who are pretty plugged in aren't worried about the election consequences. I think they were having fundamental policy arguments, right? One of the arguments that came down with that bill on both sides that folks were talking about is if a parent is misgendering or dead naming their kid on purpose, how does that play into a role during custody battles, right? And you saw
that's where you saw some Dems side with Republicans on
Yeah.
this bill. I was so surprised, but Kyle Mullica, that was his quote, was this was a parental rights issue. Although he said, I support trans folks, I'm concerned about the implications to the power of parents.
Yeah. So that was a fight at the Capitol. It's one of these things that actually, like, I think the time clock at the legislative session does us a disservice, right? When you only have 120 days to discuss these issues and you feel like you need to pass them and you're kind of like a boilerplate environment and everything else is like moving in chaos, I feel like you sometimes don't get to the right policies and a lot of things get pushed. So hopefully we keep expanding protections for transgender individuals. I don't think it's, I don't at least hear or see that people feel like it's an election issue.
That's interesting. They did pass some. I mean, this custody thing they took out.
Yeah, I mean,
but
the bill still passed and it still does have protections.
Yeah, the dead naming and made discriminatory at work and school, requiring state health insurance to cover gender affirming care, adding a gender field to death certificate forms.
Yeah.
Like, I think those are meaningful protections that people probably care a lot about.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it was just like anything, like any of these bills, a lot of times a big chunk of it comes out. And that was sort of what happened here. Let's talk about the AI situation. AI rollback failure. Paul, I have to say this was confusing to me. Dems were trying to bring something back to life.
It is confusing.
What?
I know some broad strokes, maybe Deep can fill in details, but my understanding of what happened was last year, the Democrats passed this big sweeping AI regulation.
First in its nation.
First in the nation. We were the leaders of regulating AI, putting some guardrails on this new burgeoning industry that is attracting so much venture capital backing. And as he signed it, Polis said, I don't know about this. I'm going to sign it, but I don't know about this. And I think we should keep working on it. Next session, which was this year, because the implementation date is actually next year. So this session, they talked about it and they tried to think about what maybe they should tweak or change. Some of the specifics, I mean, I don't know if people are aware of this, but I think that some of the specifics are really interesting because they have affected our company, CityCast. And I'd love to share that because you called Polis pro-business earlier. I think he would say he's pro-saving people money. And I think our example shows how that distinction plays out in the real world. So one of the things the bill did would ban the use of AI in hiring. And we hire people at CityCast. Earlier this year it happened. So I was looking at a bunch of applications. We use one of these big content management systems. When people hire, they submit their resumes. All of them get filed into this system. So I get to look at a bunch at once. It's very efficient. I'm sure a lot of companies use this kind of service. But a new feature that this company offered was an AI assessment of the suitability of the candidate. So I was given a rating along with the resume. I was given a rating of how suitable the AI thought this person was. It was 25%, 50%, or 75%. And I had to flag to our HR person, hey, this is actually illegal in Colorado starting next year. Like, we should probably, I don't know if we're going to be compliant. So in this situation, I mean, obviously there's a lot of people that have concerns about this. Like there's a discrimination hazard for sure with these algorithms
Yeah, like
and how
what
they
is the
work.
AI looking for flagging?
100%. That's a black box, and I'm not the only
And
one
we
that
know
would
concerns
have
about
concerns.
how AI has been trained on what information it's been trained on.
I haven't heard Polis talk about this, but I can imagine he would think, okay, so if we're going to demand companies like CityCast can't use these very large, very easily accessible, a cheap hiring content management system, this is the one we thought our company thought was the best. We got the best price or something. If we can't use that, we'd be out of compliance. Then we have to use something else that's a little bit less good for us. You know, maybe we're not choosing that for the AI, but it happens to be there. And so maybe that makes Denver a little bit less attractive of a place for CityCast to do business. And there's probably a bunch of companies like this. And then there's on top of that, like AI is kind of the thing that's growing in tech right now. Do we really want as a state to be saying, hey, AI companies, innovators that want to work on this, like we don't do it here. This isn't the place. And so for Polis, he's thinking like jobs. He's thinking like, how do we attract smart people who want to build businesses to this state? Is this bill the way to do it? So that's what I'm seeing in this fight was again reasonable discussion from both sides.
Yeah, it sort of got spicy. I mean, it's really funny when you're in the building and there's like this political intrigue happening and people are using procedural rules. I think everyone's nerding out. The staffers are like, oh, finally my poli-sci degree and all the binge watching of West Wing is finally relevant. So it's there was some drama about like a representative kind of filibustering it until it technically died, right?
Kind of forcing it
to
die.
Between Democratic leadership trying to cut off debate so they wouldn't filibuster it. Essentially, there was this big letter that was signed. So as you were saying, this AI bill was supposed to be implemented, is going to be implemented next year. I think February or some time like that. So they were going to pass a bill that kicked that out another year, right? The original bill sponsors and some other advocates were like, no, we still have a year to figure this out. Let's keep pushing forward with this. Let's see it. There was a big letter sign. Mike Johnson signed it. Attorney General Phil Weiser signed it. Jared Polis signed it. Joe Neguse signed it.
I think Brittany Pedersen did too.
Brittany Pedersen signed it. I think a lot of people signed that letter.
Heavy
and then
hitters.
all the 200 different businesses signed it. I know the CEO of Ibotta Nugget sponsors. Not the show sponsors though. But think about it.
Not yet.
Only if the AI bill's gone, I'm sure. They all signed a letter, but like, hey, kick it out a year or so. So people are, I heard the word special session like 10 times.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
they always
man,
say that though.
But it's been happening.
We've had a lot on property taxes.
So it would be really interesting to have an AI special session. People are saying we might have a special session on like Medicare reimbursements as well. But it was interesting to see this dynamic kind of play out. It's not the last we hear about AI regulations in Colorado.
Oh, for sure. I think it's just the beginning. It sounds like.
I mean, the way that it's kind of like become politicized nationally and locally. Like Trump obviously loves AI. We know he loves it. Elon, his best friend, Elon Musk.
They love the art it creates
AI,
of them.
A rogue AI.
He wants desperately to become AI.
Nice. We should make a CityCast AI, like, oh, buddy.
I don't know. I don't know.
What do you call it?
Personally, I think the politics is kind of like, I don't know. I think it's like not being looked at, like it's twisting it up the way it's being interpreted in culture, like what the actual technology is. It's still so new and people are still figuring out what it could be, what it could be used for. Like if you ask a real person on the street, they'll be like, yeah, maybe it seems like a useful tool. Maybe you could use it for something. Whereas some people are like, it's the devil, it should be banished from the earth. And other people are like,
which is what happens with all new technology. I mean, we saw this with, just going back to television. The internet, the same kind of concerns where a lot of unknowns mean people are fearful. A lot of folks are also thinking of it as like something good and what could happen.
It's another example of the split in the Democratic Party locally, because some people, the ones that passed it, the Democrats last year, clearly wanted us to be on the vanguard of regulating AI, whereas Polis, more on the center, more open for business, wanting to save people money, is thinking maybe not so fast. And that's where the disagreement's happening.
Well, we'll come back for the AI special session.
I wonder if the attendance would be good, or if some lawmakers would just be like, I don't care.
I think you
It
are
does feel a little bit
required
like one of those
to-
issues.
I think you're required to show up. And like they did this in Texas where the Texas Democrats refused to show up for a special session. So they didn't have quorum. So like the governor at that time told the state troopers to go find the Democrats, arrest them, and
Okay,
bring them
Texas.
into the thing. So they hid out in Oklahoma for a bit.
Oh my God.
So
Wow.
That's
that would be-
politics. I love that.
imagine like an AI bill, AI special session, and then you have like some progressives and some other folks like hiding out in the mountains.
Mhm.
You have to bring them back. That'd be fascinating.
Mhm.
Good TV.
It'd be
Well,
good TV. It'd be
we-
good content for us.
we shall see. We'll be watching more for that special session, I'm sure. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, the YIMBY survey. And we're back. Our next hot topic is this YIMBY survey from YIMBY Denver. We're talking YIMBYs and YIGBYs. Yes, in my backyard, and yes, in God's backyard. Let's start with the survey that YIMBY Denver released recently. It was a poll from Change Research, which surveyed 297 Denver voters between March 20th and the 22nd about how they felt about housing density. The results show that maybe, yes, Denverites do want density. Deep, you're a member of YIMBY Denver, right?
I am a member of YIMBY Denver. I'm on their Leads Council, which is kind of like their leadership organization. So
What
I'm here in my own official capacity, though, as we love to say.
what struck you about the results of this survey?
The results came back, and it sort of fit into the priors and the hopes that I think folks would want.
Which folks?
The YIMBY folks.
YIMBY folks.
Okay.
It's true. NIMBYs probably wouldn't like it. The
mean,
interesting.
People disagree about housing in Denver. I mean, this is a fact of our city.
Is this where we mentioned Park Hill Golf Course again?
We're going to
Oh,
talk
God.
about
Kidding.
it.
We should have pulled that, right? That would have been fun.
We're gonna have
We
a whole
did it
separate.
twice. We
we
did
need
it
a
twice.
second
The
separate
YIMBYs
channel.
lost. We pulled it twice. The whole city voted. The YIMBYs lost.
Depending on who you ask, but yeah, that was a multifaceted issue, right? We need abundance of housing, right? That's the whole goal, abundance.
For some,
Yeah, Ezra Klein, come on the show.
you should.
You should. So the takeaways from the survey is, I think folks do want more housing, right? You feel the need in the city that it's getting too expensive. Building more housing is probably necessary. Folks are like, maybe I don't live in a building that has AC, a building that's maybe dilapidated, a building that could use more, oomph to it. So I think folks do want more building in general. The question becomes where, and that's the interesting part of the YIMBY survey. There was two questions in particular. One was about upzoning to 8-story apartments around RTD stations, and one was about upzoning for apartments around parks. And those came in heavily in support, almost in every single neighborhood across the city. So those are interesting. You know, the mayor right now in the city has a missing middle that they're looking for at the Denver level. And I think YIMBY Denver and a lot of those advocates in that space will try to push the city like, hey, look, people like this. People want more apartments in their neighborhoods. They want more apartments near RTD stations. Let's do this. And if that happens, maybe that we'll see more construction. And if the city isn't biting, I think there has been some chatter, maybe not YIMBY Denver, maybe other groups are looking at maybe a ballot measure for November of 2026. So Park Hill Golf Course, true. That was supposed to be housing, and now it's going to turn into a park. That had a lot of different tensions with the community. That had a lot of history in that particular land, right? There was the easement. It was partly city, there's deals that was going on. If you do a flat upzoning about building apartments near housing or near parks or near RTD stations, that's going to look different, I think, in terms of the arguments you have.
Well, yeah, but that's the whole debate. It always has been this. You ask any Denverite if they want cheaper housing, they're going to say absolutely. If you ask any Denverite, hey, can we replace your neighbor's house with an 8-plex? They're going to think, where am I going to park? You know, that's the debate. That's why it's about your backyard. It's about which backyard are we talking
It's
about?
really about your parking spot.
Yeah,
I think is a big part of it. For sure.
Truly, I think Denverites
That's something
really,
we hear that
really
over
care.
and over again. It's like, where's the parking? And this is something that folks in the affordability space and the density space have also tried to address through parking minimums and things like that. And a lot of Denverites don't like that. They don't want you to build a building that doesn't have at least one parking spot, if not two, for every unit in that building. And I mean, we've done episodes on this about how in theory it sounds great, but then it's a struggle when you take it to the community where it might be built.
And I mean, we all know the arguments on both sides. I think if this is your first time hearing about it, the arguments on both sides are density is better for the climate. Walkability is better for your health. More density is more walkability. Like better for transit density. All these things go together. The other side is character of your community. That's why Denver is special. Things like historic buildings, things like single family houses. That's where people like living. That's why people move to the suburbs, so they have more space for their kids. They can raise them. This is the debate. Now, where it's going to get tested, you alluded to the city and the mayor working on this. So this has not been reported. We're probably going to talk about this on the show a lot, hopefully soon. But there is a project that some city planners have been working on for the last few years called Unlocking Housing Choices. They've been looking at cities like Portland and Minneapolis that have introduced upzoning in certain neighborhoods to bring duplexes and fourplexes and sixplexes and such. And the city is going to go on a roadshow starting this summer, planned. And they're going to go to different neighborhoods and they're going to ask people what that would look like in their neighborhood, because they want to do this. They want to make this change, hopefully in 2026. So this fight, we are going to see this at community meetings very soon in a neighborhood near you. So yes, citywide, people want more housing, people want cheaper housing, but is it in your neighborhood? We'll see.
What I love about this approach from the city, though, is they already have a gallery up of images of what this already looks like in neighborhoods that you don't think have that you might think of as only single family homes. And they have this great gallery of like duplexes, fourplexes, eightplexes that are mixed into these blocks where single family homes are. So my hope is that folks can start to picture something different than this fear of, let's say, the slot home. Like, we know the fear of the slot home is real. People hated what that looked. A lot of folks, not everybody, but a lot of folks hated what that did to the north side. So there was a pushback on that particular design. I think a lot of it will come down to design, but I am interested to see how the city positions this particular, because they've tried this so many times.
Here's what I got from my conversation with some of these planners on the positioning. They were like, look at the trends now of what the single family zoning is doing to our neighborhoods. These neighborhoods where there is a lot of demand, like on the north side, they're getting flipped. And these homes are getting flipped and scraped, and they're getting expanded. Of the single family residences that were scraped in 2024, the average increase in size was 3,125 square feet. So the character of the neighborhood is changing.
Yeah.
It's just that the housing density is not changing. We're not adding more spaces for real people to live. We're just making homes bigger for people to enjoy more luxurious spaces. So if we were to take those same lots and allow that home to be split into two, so two families could live there.
Or even in a fourplex, 3,000 square feet. My house is 700 square feet. 3,000 square feet, you can do a lot with that.
Yeah, I think that's what they're going to be pushing, is that debate. Anyway, go on.
It becomes about like, well, how are you using the space? Are you using the space appropriately? I do feel for a lot of the folks who are like from the traditional north side or the west side, or even like the 5 Points area, right? When those places got upzoned and the more single family affluent areas did not, that's of course where all the money was invested, and that's where the new units came. If you were to upzone Wash Park, Wash Park right now is like big single family houses that are going for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. Instead of having a $2 million house on one of those things, I'm sure people would be like, oh, let's split this one house right now into 5 or 6 different units, 7 units or so.
Which we used to do with Victorian homes in Capitol Hill in particular.
Yeah.
And that trend is reversed.
And
but
I mean, that neighborhood would pretty serve well with density, right?
It would be extraordinarily attractive for many, many people to live there.
And if we're talking about like revitalizing Broadway, revitalizing downtown, you're going to need the density to do that, right?
Yeah.
And it is about choices. If you're able to build these different houses, some people will opt into a single family house. Some people will opt into different units. Some people will opt into townhouses, right? You know, I live in Cap Hill. I love it. I love being able to walk to grocery stores, walk to restaurants, walk to my friend's house. And like the quality of life improvement of having all that within walking distance is insurmountable.
Yeah. I think Wash Park is such a good example, though, Paul, because it's not only single family homes. It's exactly what you're talking about, the scrape, and then these massive houses. If you just walk along Wash Park, especially on the east side of it, there's some of the worst architecture I've ever seen over there, like the Macaroni Grill style, like 40 columns of like what is going on? But at any rate, if that was 4 homes, I could see it being a little less intrusive if I understood like more people could live there. Okay, I'll compromise on the architecture a little bit if it means more folks can live there. I don't love it, but if that's what they wanted to build,
It
And that
might still be ugly.
totally.
It
Oh,
probably
apartment buildings are ugly too. There's tons of them.
the
There's
single
tons of
stair
beautiful
bill is
ones.
supposed to fix the ugliness.
okay.
Can we
Sure.
talk about the single stair bill? Because I have to say, I don't know if I understand what they were trying to accomplish with this.
So if you go into any modern day apartment buildings, you'll see that essentially they're all sort of designed the same. Is you go up a elevator shaft or you go up a staircase, and you'll see a long hallway with units on either side. And at the end of that hallway is another staircase. Right now in America, after a certain height, you need 2 staircases for fire exits. That's not true across the rest of the world. And what essentially that does is the only way you can design apartments in Denver or anywhere else is having those 2 stairwells. So every single time you're going to have this long, long hallway with another thing at the end that boxes in your units. They look ugly. The outside has to look a different way. With a single staircase or a single point of entry and exit, you can actually start having really interesting, innovative looking buildings. So they've done a lot of design projects around this. This is one of the small little tweaks that they're doing at the state level that actually might lead to some bigger results. But that's where we're at. We're like little technocrats about housing. As far as the YIMBY survey goes, going back to this whole wash part debate, there was a question in there. And if you look at the crosstabs, there was a question about, should Denver spot rezone? Should we upzone the affluent neighborhoods first or upzone the entire city? And actually, people were more favorable about saying just upzone the whole thing. Like, let's not choose winners and losers. Let's just say,
because we're already kind of doing that on a per project basis. We're already like upzoning individually. I mean, in some cases it's not happening, but I agree in that I think if we make it for everyone, then we can't be having this fight over where those developments are happening, because technically it could happen in any neighborhood.
And I'm also pretty left on the spectrum, right? I'm also like a Democratic Socialist, so part of DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. So, there's been a lot of pushback from the left on Ezra Klein's book, Abundance. And the way I think you look at housing is like there's 3 different questions about, one, where is housing, right? And what type of housing is it? That's question 1. Question 2 is who is building the housing, right? Is it unions? Is it private folks, construction folks? How does that work? And then question 3 is who owns the housing? I think Ezra Klein's book and like this abundance movement, the YIMBY movement, actually do a good job. Like, we need more housing everywhere, right? We want denser neighborhoods. More people should do it. We don't really mind who builds it, right? And we don't really mind who owns it. There is a question that comes to this whole thing about who should own it, right? If you are going to make 4plexes citywide or 6plexes citywide, I think Denverites would love it if those homes were owned by Denverites, right? But if I'm like, hey, we're going to do 6plexes citywide and they're all owned by BlackRock, I think people are like, no, kill me now instead, right? So that's like a different question that you have.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not sure if we're putting the cart before the horse or if this is the first thing we do is like, hey, let's start building the housing and then let's tackle the ownership problem after, or do you do it in tandem?
That's a really good question.
I want to ask you about some stuff I saw in the crosstabs.
Yes.
Because this is
Of
where
the
it got
survey.
interesting to me.
Okay.
When you break down this survey into the racial and gender and age demographics, things get interesting. Number 1, men support density more than women.
I thought that was
substantially.
So you see this often, which is really interesting, is the YIMBY movement can be kind of like tech bro oriented, right?
What do you
Even
mean?
if you look at the Ezra Klein kind of abundance
Ezra
movement,
Klein's like the perfect example of
Nerdy
the
white
tech
guys
bro,
like
nerdy
YIMBY
white guy
stuff? What is this?
but
that
then you
has a solution for a lot of communities that don't feel represented in that solution.
And it's I don't know how to put my thumb on this, and I don't really understand it, but I've seen that in my own life about like the upzoning crowd, the technocrat crowd, really, the Mike Johnsons, the Jared Polises. They're like, hey, tweak the things, build the things, and we'll figure it out on the other end. And then the other end of this, if you've actually read Matthew Desmond's book, Evicted, there's a really good line in there that it says men of color get locked up and women of color get locked out, right? So when you look at movements like Colorado Homes for All or the big coalitions that were behind the Just Cause for Eviction bill, when you go to those meetings, it's almost all women of color.
I was just
That's
thinking this
interesting.
about like the GES collective is majority moms of color in this neighborhood who have been fighting for a really long time. 9 to 5 Colorado. Who do you think is represented in 9 to 5 Colorado? They do a lot of this work too to do big purchases of mobile home parks for communities. And it is often women and women of color. So, what does that say to you, Deep, about these two competing but also working towards the same goals groups?
So I think everyone's aligned in the same thing where they're like, everyone should have an affordable house, right? Everyone should have shelter. It's a human right. We need to build this stuff and it should be protected. And it's interesting that these crosstabs are kind of showing that for some reason in every single neighborhood, men are like, we need more supply. And women are, we didn't ask questions about this, but I would love if we did another survey to be like tenant protections. And I think that might be it. I think like the way that you kind of see that maybe boil down is that, you know, that side is more about tenant protections and the housing that way, protecting what we have versus
Keeping people
maybe
in
the
their
technocrat
homes.
ones like building more. I think any solution is going to have to be a marriage of it, right? When you look at places that have done housing well, when you look at Europe, when you look at the Asian countries, when you look at these big cities with a lot of people, they have a marriage of both pro zoning and tenant protections and rent control, not rent control, rent stabilization.
One other piece of data from the survey on this same point. I thought this was the biggest challenge for YIMBY Denver. And it's on, what we were talking about, women of color. This is the biggest group of, so the question was, do you support allowing housing development, more housing development in historically affluent neighborhoods? And the only group that majority opposed that are women of color, 52%.
Yeah.
Oppose allowing more housing development in historically affluent neighborhoods.
I thought it was interesting. The way I had read that question was, do you want upzoning first in Wash Park? Do you want upzoning first in Cherry Creek? That is an interesting data point coming back that women and women of color in particular didn't want that solution. But at the same end, the other question was, do you want upzoning across the city, which they did agree with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it comes back to that whole thing. It's like, instead of just picking winners and losers, it has to be a citywide thing.
Yeah, I think that'll also be the only way politically to do it.
Yeah.
I think if it's piecemeal, then it's a question of whose backyard again, and we know that's a loser.
Yeah, it's a big complex problem, as we were talking about with the legislative session. Right now, we're doing a big tweaks. When the 2026 elections come up, I think these are going to be big conversations, and hopefully we start moving towards it.
Yeah.
Or coming soon to a ballot near you. Not soon, actually November 2026.
That's around the corner.
Yeah.
I think that's what Kyle Clark said to us last week.
We can live another 18 months in this, world on fire.
We'll see what happens. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, our Rocky Mountain highs and lows of the week. We're back with our wins and fails of the week, things that ruled, things that sucked. As always, we talk about our fails first so we can end on a good note. Paul, what's your fail this week?
I have the honor of going first. This is fun. I'm having fun today, Deep. I'm glad you're here. I have a fail that's a follow-up to a story we talked about probably 2 months ago. It's a fail and it's also a plug. So we talked about this Zeppelin Station trouble, how it's going to be rebranded into a new dinosaur-themed Jurassic Park, not IP infringing, but possibly Jurassic Park themed immersive bar and restaurant food hall thing called Clever Girl.
It was finally something that was going to take me to Zeppelin Station. I finally was going to bring myself to go there.
Yeah. So we talked about that. It seems cool. I've been looking forward to it. It was supposed to open in April. I've been following the chatter online of people stopping by. I went myself last night. There are no dinosaurs. There are no animatronic dinosaurs in this food hall. It is still very bleak and very sad.
Is there like a mural?
There is nothing. There is nothing. There is a small printout poster that says Clever Girl Jam upstairs on Thursdays. And when I asked the person at the Italian stand, hey, what's the deal with the dinos? Are they coming? And she was like, I don't know, maybe June? And it was supposed to be April. I don't know. I mean, I don't think business is going great over there. I think they're having trouble. My fail is that it's behind schedule.
I would also just say, I think that those animatronic dinosaurs are really expensive, though I feel like a listener alerted us to the fact that there is a company here in Colorado that makes them. So
no tariffs.
maybe they need to connect with the Colorado-made animatronic dinosaur people.
No tariffs on
It'd be interesting
animatronic
if they're,
dinos.
the dinosaurs couldn't make it because of the tariffs. They're like stuck on a boat somewhere.
That would
Just-
be funny.
It could be
Like,
very,
um,
very real.
You know, they should buy a Chuck E. Cheese and take those old ones and just like how different is a mouse animatronic from a dinosaur?
I
one?
would pay to see those again in
Great
real life
question,
and
Deep.
not have to just watch them on YouTube, because I have watched the guy that's purchased the Rockafire band, explosion band, and then reprograms them to do like Usher songs and stuff. I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Was there a Chuck E. Cheese in Denver?
Showbiz Pizza
Showbiz Pizza.
turned into Chuck E. Cheese, still here because my son has been recently.
Okay.
So it's still happening, but the animatronics are long gone because the upkeep on them is insane, and it's just TV screens now.
Got it.
So this could have been it.
Anyway, that was my fail, but I said I have a plug. I have a plug.
Okay.
The other thing that happened on that episode was I was trying to explain the reference to the name Clever Girl
Lord.
to the movie Jurassic Park, and I got it so wrong that we got many calls.
Jeff
Did we get many
Goldblum,
calls,
right?
or was it just
It was
JD?
it was not Jeff Goldblum.
It was not Jeff Goldblum.
It was some guy who's the actor I don't remember, but he was in the forest, and then the raptors, like, they set a trap for him, and then they come at him, and he's like, "Clever girl, set a trap for me."
I
That's the
swear
scene.
it was the door opening scene.
That's what I thought, and I was
This
wrong.
is not my wheelhouse.
Do you think there's like a Mandela effect?
Maybe.
Where it's like it's like the Berenstain Bears thing? Berenstain
the
Bears?
Shazam
Berenstain?
movie or
Yes,
whatever?
I had that effect with me.
Interesting.
So anyway, my friend JD Lopez called into the show and corrected me. Thank you, JD, as always. Appreciate your voicemails.
Did we get other calls other
We
than
got
JD?
quite a few.
Okay.
It was
Just
I
checking.
was
Just
appropriately
checking.
chastised for this failure. But it got me thinking about Jurassic Park, and JD and I were talking, and we were both like, "There's a new movie coming out. Why don't?" For me, at least, it was like, I used to love Jurassic Park, and now I can't even remember this reference. What the heck happened to this franchise?
Rewatch.
This is what we did. We rewatched the entire 6 movies. There are 6 movies.
Amazing.
And
Wow.
we recorded some episodes about him with some of our favorite people, like Neela Pekarik, great local musician, also secretly huge Jurassic Park fan. Comedians Evan Joe, Katie Bowman, Elon Stribling, outdoor educator and comedian,
Former guest.
guest.
Neela, former
really
guest, yeah.
awesome local people. Had a lot of fun talking about this franchise, and you can subscribe and listen right now. And
Hey,
find it on
Paul's-
YouTube.
Paul's using his podcast to plug his other
Yeah.
podcast.
I
What's
think
the podcast called?
Slick.
it's called Hold On to Your Butts.
Hold on to your butts. Nice.
Yeah, and you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, like I said.
All
I'll
right.
put links in the show notes.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay, we're still on fails. Deep. What's your fail?
Oh, the Denver Nuggets got
Mm.
such high hopes after the buzzer beater, basically.
This is just like what they do to
I
us.
know, right?
I think it's been great. It's exciting.
Heartstring pulling.
I
It's
get- I
true.
get
It does make for
Detention.
good
It's
playoffs.
fun. That's Russell Westbrook's my favorite guy now because he's giving me highs, he's giving me lows.
He felt like he had home court advantage, really. Like he was the only one who was actually making like buckets at all. So you'll either live by the Russ or die by the Russ. So
And I'm loving it. I'm
Yeah.
there for the ride.
So yeah, it's sad, but we're bringing it back to Denver. We're gonna get a win here. It's gonna be big. So,
Yeah.
but fail for the Denver Nuggets. We set the record for most points against a team in a playoff run in the first half. Guess who had the record before that?
Oh.
Ooh.
Also us. What the hell?
I was like, God, we're so bad at
80.
being
I think
bad
it was
and
87
That's so
points
funny.
in the half.
Makes
Yeah.
for good watching.
At least they got some rest, right?
Yeah, I
Our
don't know.
bench
I
got some
don't know.
practice.
Yeah, we'll hope so. We'll hope
Yeah.
so. I mean, they were doing good before that.
I mean,
so.
I hope they make it to
we'll see.
round 3. But if they don't, then I guess AG's back to slinging chicken tenders.
Get us an invite to that party.
That
Someone
joke
out
might
there.
not make sense if that other part got cut out.
If you,
Okay, I'll close this out before we get to wins. Our friend of the show, Megan Ululani Boyanton, in the Denver Post reported this week that Carla Medina, the DoorDash driver who was delivering to Buckley Air Force Base last year, who was detained by federal immigration officials, is still 6 months later sitting in that ICE facility.
I missed this story. She was delivering
Yes.
like sandwiches or something
Yes,
to the Air
someone-
Force Base, and
someone
they
on
were
the base
like,
ordered
"Show me
them.
your papers,"
Mhm.
and then they
And
kept
they
her.
detained her. And she's in the middle of an asylum seeking process. One of the most
How did I
heartbreaking.
miss that?
Yeah.
Oh
it's-
man,
So she's been there for 6 months. She's a mom of 2.
It's
She has a
crazy.
7 and 12-year-old. Her family is too afraid to visit her because they are also in the asylum. This
Wow.
just breaks my heart for her husband and her kids. She can't even see her family because they're afraid of what could happen in
Mhm.
this country.
Mhm.
And so I'm glad that Megan wrote this story. It's bringing it to light what's going on. They did attempt to talk to ICE. ICE did not respond. But if you want to support her and her family while they work through this, you can visit Casa de Paz. I'll put a link in the show notes. They help folks coming out of detention or families who are dealing with detention stuff. Just help them cover basic needs, help them figure basic things out, because all of a sudden this dad is a single dad of 2 kids while his wife is being detained for an undetermined amount of time. So just my heart goes out to the Medina family for sure.
That is just such a crazy.
She's
I mean,
just
that is
doing
like
her job.
absurdly. The I can't even. I normally try to empathize with everybody involved in a situation like this, but like to order a sandwich from DoorDash
Mhm.
and then to get it and then be
Mhm.
like, wait a second, actually also
Yeah,
let
talk
me
about
let's talk
profiling.
about your citizenship status.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
that.
It's draconian.
Yeah. And this was
For
6
that-
months ago. I mean, this was prior to what we started to
I
see in
don't know.
January.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's also a good reminder that this is not a brand new situation. This has been going on.
I do have a win that hopefully will make that a little bit easier.
Let's
Okay,
talk about
let's
it.
start with your win then.
So, earlier this week, a federal judge in Colorado extended the order blocking Trump's. He's using the 1798 Alien Enemies Act to do
Mhm.
all these deportation of folks who were involved with Trendia, right? Supposedly,
with their
right?
tattoos.
If you have a tattoo, you basically can get deported now
Like
from the
any
U.S. without
tattoo.
any tattoo. You can get deported without due process. So the federal judge in Colorado, Judge Sweeney, blocked it in Colorado.
I think this was the
So
second time she's
This is
blocked
the
it.
second time she's done it. She's extended it again. So, Coloradoans can, if you have a tattoo, you can kind of walk a little bit more freely now, knowing that you're not going to be just swept up off the street and sent to a foreign country. So that's a little bit of a win here that, so far the federal judiciary is doing its job, and especially here in Colorado, they're pushing back against this draconian stuff.
The Supreme Court, we didn't talk about this last time we talked about this, but the Supreme Court did rule on this. When this first started coming up, it was like a month ago or something. They ruled that it was a 7-2 ruling that people do deserve due process. So I think this local court is probably figuring out what that means, because the Supreme
Mhm.
Court left a lot of space for interpretation about what due process
Yep.
would mean in these cases. So I still think, like, I don't know. I mean, it's worth it. We need to keep watching it to figure out, what these lawyers are fighting over. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough situation still.
Yeah.
Bree, what's
But
your
that
win?
is a win. City Council and the mayor unanimously rejected the extension of license plate cameras.
Mm.
I do want to say a couple of weeks ago on the show, we had Lisa Calderon on, and I was like, they started doing speed cameras, or they were talking about doing speed cameras in my neighborhood, and I was happy because speeding is such a problem. I live off of Alameda and Federal. People speed all the time. And Lisa had, made the great point, like, this is still surveillance regardless. And so I have totally changed my mind on that. Not that I ever was into surveillance, but I was hoping for an outcome around speeding, and this is clearly not the way to get that outcome. So I'm happy that that the city has rejected this extension of this sorry, excuse me, of the, oh my God. Sorry.
Flock.
Yeah, flock
Flock.
technology.
Yeah.
So there were 111 solar powered cameras across 70 sites in Denver that were photographing roughly 2 million license plates per month. So the concern was really obviously about privacy, technology, and Sarah Parody's office sent an email out, and it had this great quote that kind of explains why this is so scary. We learned that Denver currently shares the data of our 111 cameras that collect hundreds, if not thousands, of information. It collects all this information, and law enforcement agencies across the country may have access to that. So especially when we're talking about things like immigration and how Colorado is really working to protect folks, this seemed directly opposite of that. And so I'm really glad that City Council listened to folks, because there was a lot of pushback from the community about the use of these cameras. So
Yeah, it's a really interesting case. I'm a progressive guy, and I'm someone who police officers need more accountability. Especially, you've seen so much of the abuse that police officers have committed against minorities and people of color. One of the ways that a lot of advocates early on actually talked about reducing negative interactions with police and the community was actually these cameras, right? So right now, if you're a cop, you're not spending as much time solving crimes, right? You're not actually preventing crimes. a lot of what they were doing, especially not in Denver, but like elsewhere, is they're pulling you over, they're writing you a speeding ticket, and that's where you see a lot of the negative interactions happen, right? You're pulling these people over, maybe they're reaching for something, all this is happening. So to reduce those amount of interactions, that's what these cameras are supposed to do, right? You could literally automize a lot of this stuff, so the police officers aren't interacting with it. But it's unfortunate that this data was being linked with this federal administration. So hopefully in the future we can figure out like a compromise or something with that. But it's surprising that it was unanimous.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. And that was after a push from the mayor as well, the mayor's office saying, we don't want this either. We advise you really to not support it. But it was interesting because there is a little bit, usually it's rare to see a unanimous vote, I think, on council around something like this.
Yeah.
So
I want to recognize a small win there. It's cool you changed your mind. That's a cool thing about this show. We get to follow this stuff.
A struggle because I don't like snitching and I don't like surveillance, but I really, really want people to slow down. It's all I want. It's like, it makes me so terrified and sad in my neighborhood because people drive so fast. But yeah, learning that this is just not the way. I don't know what the way is. And I feel for pedestrian advocates who feel like this is a lost cause. But I don't know. There's another way, and it's not surveillance. So, Paul,
I can go. Am I last? You
are
right?
last.
Deep? Okay. So mine is just such a fun Denver story. Like, this is an only in Denver story. My win goes to Judge Bill G. Meyer, who recently adjudicated the divorce of William and Renee Brinkerhoff. None of those names probably mean anything, but if you've been to the restaurant La Loma, which is a growing chain of Denmex restaurants across the metro area, you've probably had their green chili. What Judge Bill G. Meyer decided in the case of this divorce is that these two, who own this chain of restaurants, must share custody of the green chili recipe.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Isn't that the best?
Which is like actually a really great compromise because we have seen this happen before with the Chubby's empire and the fight with the Cordova family over who gets to be the holder of that official recipe. So this was a great compromise where we can maybe see that green chili now in different restaurants.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see it all over all of the new La Lomas and then the new original La Lomas and whatever they're calling all the La Lomas. I think they all get to use the name, even though they're now owned by different sides of this split up family. I mean, this is just a twist in another great Denver story to me, and I love it.
I love a green chili story.
Yeah, they should have made it like a competing green chili lines. Like, you go there and you choose which chili you want. You're like, I'm on her team. I'm on his team. It could be big.
Yeah.
Did you ever go to I think in Alphabet City in New York, there's those two Indian restaurants that do that, and they fight to get you to come into one side or the other side.
That's
it's
so
the
funny.
most
That's
fun
so
because you're
fun.
like, are they in cahoots or
I love that
the
stuff.
food's good on both sides? But
Anyway,
really
that was a
fun.
great Denver Post story this week. Got to give them
nice.
credit for that.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Deep, Paul, thanks.
See you all at the next Aaron Gordon party.
Fingers crossed. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. Our producers this week were Paul Karolyi, Olivia Jewel Love, and Natalie Rivera. Adam Sage edits the video for YouTube. McKenna Harford writes our morning newsletter, Hey Denver. Abby Madigan runs our social media. Dude IDK Studios films our Friday show. I'm your host, Bree Davies. Our music is by Los Mogochetes with additional mixing by Tyler Lindgren. We also had music this week from Rob McAllister, Hip Color, and Sven Lindball. If you haven't already, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram at CityCast Denver, and tell Aaron Gordon about us next time you see him. You can sign up for our daily newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. See you next week.